full disclosure, as we're recording this, the Dodgers and Astros are just getting started. So we're not 100% sure what is happening in that game. But we do know that the National League West is getting tighter and tighter. And, well, going into this year, we all knew San Diego and LA were going to be in a dogfight for first place. Little did we know San Diego would have a losing record at this point. LA is trying to push into second place by themselves. The Dbacks remain in first place, but the Giants have taken a gigantic crowbar and forced themselves into this playoff discussion. Now, the Diamondbacks did win the final game of the series against San Francisco, but the Giants won that series and played very, very good baseball. Good for the Dbacks and Ketel Marte for powering into the victory today by McCovey Cove. But the previous two games were really, confidence-building victories for San Francisco. On the game on Saturday, what was the final? I have it right here. The final score on Saturday was a 7-6 game. Mm-hmm. Where the D-backs had a lead late, and then the Giants had a pair of 2-run rallies. And then the game on Friday was I think that was the game that I was actually watching with my mother-in-law. And that was the game where the Giants they had the big 5-run rally in the 8th. Now today the D-backs made sure it was not a sweep, because if the Giants had won that, they would have pulled to within half a game. As it is right now, they're 2.5 games back. And depending on whether or not Los Angeles wins, if Los Angeles wins, they'll be 2 back. If they lose, they'll be 3 back. But either way, we are in late June, and there are 3 talented teams bunched up super tight in the NL West. As our resident Diamondbacks guru, what are your thoughts on this? And are you worried about your team? And which one of those 2 teams are you most worried about at this time?
I mean, I'm still probably overall more worried about the Dodgers just because of their consistency over the last few years, the level of talent, the fact that they could go out there at the deadline and make any kind of move. But the Giants in this series definitely gave the D-backs a run for their money. I mean, they won the series. They took 2 out of 3, and they kind of out D-back the D-backs. The D-backs all season have been called the answer backs because of their ability to rally. But in this series, it was the Giants punching them in the mouth and fighting back constantly in games 1 and game 2 to rally back against the D-backs, something that the D-backs have done to other teams all season. So for once, it was the D-backs getting punched in the mouth. And this Giants team is just loaded with professional hitters, with the J.D. Davises and the Confortos and the Petersons and the Lamont and the Lamont Wade Juniors of the world. There's no true superstars on this Giants team. It's just a collection of really good players. And they're a team that I really want to look out for as we near the trade deadline, because a month ago when they were sitting in 4th place in the NL West, I would have told you that's the perfect team you should go after and call at the deadline to pick up pieces and acquire pieces from that team, because they have so many dudes that could just be the perfect number 6 guy in your lineup or the perfect number 3, number 4 starter in your rotation. But now I'm like, with the Giants team playing the way that they are, with them pushing toward the playoffs, like, they should be buyers at that deadline, because if they're able to get a big bat in that lineup, maybe another huge rotation starter. This is a team that tried to make a splash in the offseason and wasn't able to do it. Maybe they could do it at the trade deadline, because if they can, I do think this is a team that always outperforms expectations, and I don't want to write them off. I think the Dodgers and D-backs are definitely on alert after the way the Giants have been playing the last 3 weeks.
I think what they need to do is they need to take the Luis Arraez approach. Now, obviously, they're not going to acquire Luis Arraez, but the genius of what that move was for Miami was, and I'm a broken record about this, but they didn't care if Luis Arraez had all the sexy sabermetrics. They didn't care if he had a position. They needed a professional hitter in the middle of that lineup, and Lord knows that's exactly what they got. I think the Giants, it would be great if they could get a big, huge thumper, and obviously they wanted to get Aaron Judge. That's not going to happen. But if they could just bring in a solid professional hitter into that lineup, just another bat, because you're right, it isn't a superstar laden team, which is why I believe that you compare what's happened with San Diego, who is a team filled with superstars, but if some of the superstars aren't playing up to their potential, they've fallen flat on their face. up and down the lineup of San Francisco and up and down the lineup of Arizona are just professional hitters that get the rally going. That there's not a lot of giant, like, oh my God, no pun intended, giant holes that you go like, oh God, this is going to just kill this rally right now. I think that if they can go out, I don't think they need to make a blockbuster move. I think they need to find a professional hitter just to keep the rallies going. If there's a runner on second, he's going to get a hit into the gap and drive him in. And another innings-eating starter. Again, it doesn't have it's not going to be Bumgarner. I mean, is Bumgarner retired? Is that what's happening here? Because he was DFA'd and that's it. But just an innings eater, just someone who you hand the ball to, and they're gonna your bullpen's not going to be worn out.
But would you be upset at them if they want to, get a little bit more frisky? What if they want to be like, you know what? We let the Rodons and Kevin Gausmans walk in free agency the last couple of years. Let's go replace them with a Shane Bieber or Corbin Burns at the top of this rotation.
I think if they acquired Shane Bieber, I think I would be more interested in Bieber than Burns. Okay. If you put Bieber in this rotation, then I think it gets a little scarier, because then that moves everyone, because he'll be a number one. And I think that moves everyone down a little bit, and then suddenly they'll have the pitching depth. If they make a move for Bieber, then I still think a lot of things can happen. We're going to be talking about the Mets in the final segment of this episode. But we're at a point in the year where we can't keep saying, well, it's early pretty soon. In less than a week, in less than a week, we'll be in July. You have to, this is the point of the year. As I said, we're in that middle section of the year where teams have to make hard decisions to say, what are we? And you can say all you want. The Braves had a losing record in July, all you want. And then they went on to win the World Series. But that was kind of an outlier. For some of the teams, they're going to have to really take a long look in the mirror and say, should we go for it? Should we pull the trigger? But I think for San Francisco, if they could acquire a Bieber, I think you have to do it.
And outside the Braves, I don't think you'd look at any team in the National League as some like juggernaut that you have to go through. So if I'm the Giants, maybe you could pull off a deal like the Max Scherzer one with the Dodgers and get a little 2-for-1 special where you get a Scherzer and a Trey Turner. So I don't know if the Guardians would be interested, but could you get a Bieber and maybe another one? They're strong position players. I don't know, like a Jose Ramirez, but maybe someone else in that lineup. Or could you go to the White Sox and be like, I want Giolito and I want Tim Anderson?
I think that would be more likely to happen with Chicago. Because I think the Cleveland is going to make a deal with Bieber because they know they're not going to keep him long term, but they also know they have enough pitching to survive. Mm-hmm. And as of this recording, Cleveland's a sub 500 team that's only 2 games out of first place.
Yeah,
they can't do a complete teardown when they're a good weekend away from being a first place team in July.
But didn't they just announce McKenzie out for a few weeks? They could blow up this season if they want to, at least.
But you still have a shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
With decent pitching. I mean, you can't. I mean, I'm sorry, when the carrot is there and this is why, even for a team like Chicago, who is a demonstrably bad team, but they're only 6 games out of first, and the team they're chasing is barely over 500. It's not like Chicago is in a division with Tampa. It's like, it's possible we could have a good second half, and it's possible I have to go, when was the last time Minnesota had a winning season and had a disastrous second half? You have to go all the way back to 2022. I mean, you see teams completely pull a Hindenburg over the last couple of years. So if you're Cleveland with the longest World Series drought of all time at this point, or at least current one, to say, are we going to really sacrifice a chance to go to the postseason? I mean, I don't know. This is why they get paid the big bucks and I don't. But I do think Chicago, because they have players like Giolito, they have players like Dylan Cease, they have players like I don't think they're going to trade Tim Anderson unless they're overwhelmed. But you could get 2 good pitchers from them. And if the White Sox are dangling more than one good pitcher, they could say, hey, we want to take one of your top prospects. And if you give us one of your top, you can get 2 major league pitchers, and we get we get a legit building block for the future. Yeah, I think they'd have to. I think the Giants would have to do that, and quite frankly, I think Los Angeles should do that too.
Well,
You
the
know,
Dodgers, I'm never going to count out because they're always liable to make a deal. I think this trade deadline just going to be so interesting because there's so many teams that could convince themselves either to blow it up and just tank out the rest of the season, or like, you know what? I'm only a few games out of a wild card spot. I'm only a few games out of my division lead. Maybe I should go out there and acquire more pieces and try to add to this roster and at least make the postseason. I think we're going to see more teams that ever just second guess what kind of direction they should head in at the deadline if they even think they have a shot of doing anything once they make the postseason.
I think Shane Bieber's going to LA.
Wow.
I think that's where I think is going to happen because LA has a ton of prospects and they could use a Bieber. I think the Giants are going to make a deal with the White Sox for one or two of their pitchers.
How about the D-backs? We could use some of these guys.
Well, the D-backs are, the D-backs are going to they're going to just rely on that little Millard Thomas magic. And I don't know, it's up to you. Maybe what do you think the D-backs should acquire?
I love anyone in that White Sox rotation. I like anyone in that Guardians rotation. I just want a number 3, number 2 starter for the D-backs.
All right. Well, then guess what? Giolito goes to San Francisco, and Cease goes to Arizona, and Bieber goes to Los Angeles.
Oh my God, Cease and Zach Allen, Merrill Kelly. I would probably die if that trio formed.
Yeah,
together.
that would be a hell of a trio right there.
Yeah, I think the D-backs would have a legitimate shot at winning it off. That happened.